The War Council chamber fell silent as Commander Vectress stepped through the doorway, his scales still dark with dried blood that wasn't his own. 23 senior officers of the Kalthine Empire sat motionless around the obsidian table, their breathing shallow, their eyes tracking his every movement like prey animals watching a predator circle. "Well," High Chancellor Dren's voice cracked slightly. "What happened at Outpost 17? Vectress didn't answer immediately. He walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars, his forearms hanging loosely at his sides. When he finally spoke, his words came slowly, deliberately, as if he was carefully selecting each one. "We need to leave this sector, now, immediately, before she realizes what we tried to do." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, like a dam breaking, chaos erupted. Officers shouted over each other, demanding explanations, hurling accusations of cowardice, banging their fists on the table. High Chancellor Dren raised one clawed hand, and the noise died instantly. "Commander Vectress has never shown cowardice in 40 years of military service," Dren said quietly. "So when he uses that word, when he suggests retreat, without even explaining what happened, I listen. Now, someone get him water, and we will hear this story from beginning to end." A junior officer scurried forward with a crystalline container. "No, wait, not crystalline. A glass container." "Yes, glass." Vectress took it, drank deeply, and set it down with a hollow clink that echoed in the chamber. "It started 3 months ago," he began. "Intelligence reported that the humans had established a research facility on Kepler-9. Just a small operation, maybe 30 personnel, studying the local ecosystem. Nothing military, or so we thought." "Kepler-9?" interrupted General Thross. "That frozen wasteland? What could they possibly want there?" "That's what we wanted to know," Vectress continued. "The facility sat right on the edge of the neutral zone, technically legal, but strategically positioned to monitor our supply routes. High Command decided it needed to go. A message, if you will, to remind the humans that their expansion has limits." He paused, taking another drink. His hands were steady, but several officers noticed the way his secondary eyes kept darting toward the doorway, as if expecting something to come through it. "We sent a strike team. Elite forces. 50 of our best soldiers, veterans of the Andros campaign. They were supposed to hit the facility at night, eliminate all personnel, destroy the research data, and vanish. Clean, efficient, deniable." "And?" Dren leaned forward. "And 48 hours passed with no communication. Nothing. Complete silence. So High Command sent me with a recovery team to find out what went wrong." The viewport behind Vectress showed a distant nebula, its colors shifting slowly like smoke in water. He turned back to face the council, and for the first time, they saw something in his eyes that made their blood run cold. Fear. Raw, unfiltered terror. "We landed at dawn. The facility looked intact from orbit. No signs of battle damage, no evidence of orbital strikes or explosions. We thought maybe the strike team had succeeded, but their communications equipment had been damaged. We were idiots." He laughed then, a hollow, brittle sound that made several officers flinch. "The main door was open, just open, swinging slightly in the wind. My team went in weapons ready, expecting humans, expecting resistance, expecting anything except what we found." "Which was," prompted Dren, when Vectress fell silent again. "Bodies. Our bodies. 50 Kalthine soldiers, the finest warriors our species has produced, scattered throughout that facility like broken toys. And here's the interesting part, the truly fascinating detail that kept me awake during the entire flight back. They were all killed by bladed weapons, not plasma rifles, not explosives, not any of the high-tech human weaponry we've encountered before, just blades, knives, swords, metal cutting through flesh and bone. General Thross snorted. That's impossible. Our soldiers wear combat armor specifically designed to— I know what our armor is designed to do. Vectress's shout echoed off the walls. I helped design the damn specifications, but I'm telling you what I saw with my own eyes. Armor cut through like it was made of paper. Clean cuts, precise cuts, the kind of cuts that require incredible strength and even more incredible skill. He pulled out a data pad and threw it onto the table. It skidded across the smooth surface, stopping in front of the High Chancellor. That contains every scan, every image, every piece of evidence we collected before we ran like frightened children. Look at it, study it, then tell me I'm exaggerating. Dren activated the pad, and his face went pale. He passed it to the officer next to him, who passed it to another, and another. As it made its way around the table, expressions shifted from skepticism to confusion to horror. This can't be one person, whispered Intelligence Director Morna. The timestamps, the locations, it's impossible for one individual to move that fast, to kill that many trained soldiers in such a short time frame. And yet, Vectress said softly, that's exactly what happened. We found security footage. Most of it was corrupted or destroyed, but we recovered fragments, enough to see her. Her? Dren looked up sharply. A human female, small by their standards, maybe 5.5 feet tall, dark hair tied back. She wore no armor, no special equipment, just dark clothing and— he paused, swallowing hard— and more knives than I could count. They were everywhere, strapped to her legs, her arms, her back, her chest. She moved through our soldiers like water flowing downhill, inevitable and unstoppable. He pulled up another file on his personal device, and a hologram flickered to life above the table. Grainy, distorted, but clear enough. The image showed a corridor in the research facility. 6 Kalthine soldiers advanced in standard formation, weapons raised, moving with the confidence of trained professionals. Then she appeared. The human woman seemed to materialize from the shadows, and what happened next lasted perhaps 5 seconds. But those 5 seconds would haunt everyone watching for the rest of their lives. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed physically impossible, spinning, ducking, weaving between the soldiers like she was dancing rather than fighting. Blades flashed in the low light. Once, twice, 3 times. 4, 5, 6. Before any of the soldiers could even fire their weapons, all 6 were down, bleeding, dying, dead. And she just kept walking, disappearing down the corridor as if nothing had happened, stepping over the bodies without breaking stride. By the ancestors, breathed General Thross. What is she? According to the research data we managed to salvage before fleeing, her name is Kira Vex, former human military, discharged 5 years ago. She was working as a security consultant at the facility. Just one woman. One single human woman against 50 of our best soldiers, and she won. Not just won. She annihilated them. Dren's mandibles clicked together nervously. The other humans at the facility? Untouched. Not a scratch on any of them. She killed our strike team and left the researchers completely unharmed. We found them locked in a safe room, terrified, but alive. When we breached the door, they kept asking if she was okay, if we'd hurt her. They were more worried about their security consultant than they were about themselves. Did you— Morna hesitated. Did you engage her? Try to capture or eliminate her? Vectress laughed again, that same hollow sound. Oh, we tried. We tried very hard. I had 30 soldiers with me, all armed with the latest weaponry, all briefed on what they were facing. We cornered her in the lower-level laboratory section. Or at least, we thought we'd cornered her. Looking back, I realized she wanted us to find her there. She was waiting. He closed his eyes, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. She'd let us get into position. Let us aim our weapons. Let us feel confident. Then she smiled. I will never forget that smile as long as I live. It wasn't cruel or mocking. It was just knowing. Like she'd seen this exact scenario play out 1,000 times before and knew exactly how it would end. Vectress, Dren said gently. What happened? She threw the first knife while she was still 10 meters away. It spun through the air, and I swear I could hear it humming, and took out the targeting scope on Corporal Shen's rifle. Before the scope even hit the ground, she was moving. The second knife caught Lieutenant Vork in the shoulder joint, right where the armor plates connect. The third hit Sergeant Men's weapon power cell, and his rifle exploded in his hands. Vectress opened his eyes, staring at nothing. She did all that before any of us could pull our triggers. Then she was among us, and it stopped being a fight and became a demonstration. She never killed any of my soldiers. She didn't have to. She disarmed us, disabled us, left us lying on the floor wondering what kind of creature we'd just encountered. And then she spoke. What did she say? Asked Dren. She said, and I'm translating her exact words here, tell your commanders that this facility is under my protection. Tell them that Kepler 9 is off limits. Tell them that if they send more soldiers, I won't be gentle next time. Then she just walked away. Walked away like we weren't even there, like 30 armed soldiers meant nothing to her. The council chamber was silent. Officers stared at each other, at their hands, at the table, anywhere but at Vectress or each other's eyes. Finally, General Thross cleared his throat. This is one human, one woman, surely with proper planning, with sufficient force. No. Vectress's voice was flat, final. You don't understand. I've fought the humans before. Brave soldiers, good tacticians, honorable opponents. But this woman, she's something different. Something we have no frame of reference for. And here's the part that should terrify all of you. He leaned forward, placing both primary hands on the table. After we retreated, I did some checking. Called in some favors with intelligence contacts in other species. Turns out, we're not the first ones to encounter Kira Vex. The Thondrin Collective sent a raiding party to a human colony world 2 years ago. She was there, visiting family. 37 Thondrin commandos went in. None came out. The Yarveth hierarchy tried to kidnap a human diplomat 18 months ago. His bodyguard was Kira Vex. They sent a dozen assassins. She sent back their heads in a box with a note that said, "Next time, send better killers." Around the table, officers shifted uncomfortably. High Chancellor Dren's color had gone from pale to ashen. There are rumors, Vectress continued, stories that military intelligence dismissed as propaganda or exaggeration. They say that during the frontier wars, there was a human soldier who single-handedly held a defensive position against an entire battalion of Krellian shock troops for 3 days. They say that when reinforcements finally arrived, they found her sitting on a pile of bodies, sharpening her knives, completely uninjured. They say High Command tried to recruit her for special operations, but she turned them down because, and I quote, she didn't want to make it her whole personality. These are just stories, protested Morna. Legends. Humans love their myths and heroes. Are they? Vectress pulled out another data pad. Because I cross-referenced every rumor, every legend, every whisper about an unstoppable human warrior with a preference for bladed weapons. And do you know what I found? They all describe the same woman. Same height, same appearance, same fighting style, and they span over 15 years and 14 different star systems. She's real, and she's been doing this longer than most of us have been in the military. High Chancellor Dren stood slowly, his full height imposing in the dimly lit chamber. What are you suggesting, Commander? I'm suggesting that we forget about Kepler-9. I'm suggesting that we mark this system as forbidden territory and never, ever send troops there again. And I'm suggesting, very strongly, that we open formal diplomatic channels with the human government and make absolutely certain that they know we have no hostile intentions toward their territories. That's cowardice. General Thross slammed his fist on the table. We're the Colthene Empire. We've conquered 17 star systems. We don't run from one human female. Vectress looked at him with something approaching pity. Then you lead the next assault, General. You take your finest soldiers, your best equipment, your most brilliant tactics. You go to Kepler-9, and you try to remove Kira Vex from that facility. And when you fail, when you're lying on the ground with your weapons scattered and your pride shattered, remember that I tried to warn you. The silence stretched. Dren looked around the table, reading the faces of his officers. Fear, doubt, confusion. And underneath it all, a growing realization that perhaps, just perhaps, they'd miscalculated badly. We will table this discussion, he said finally. Commander Vectress, you are relieved of duty pending a full psychological evaluation. General Thross, prepare a briefing on alternative strategies for monitoring human expansion that don't involve direct confrontation. Intelligence Director Morna, I want everything, and I mean everything, we have on this Kira Vex woman. Who she is, where she came from, what makes her so dangerous. This council is adjourned. Officers filed out quietly, whispering to each other in hushed tones. Vectress remained standing by the viewport, staring out at the stars. Dren approached him after the others had left. Do you really believe one human could pose an existential threat to our empire? The High Chancellor asked softly. Vectress didn't turn around. I believe that we've spent centuries assuming that advanced technology makes us superior. Better armor, better weapons, better ships. But we forgot something important. We forgot that sometimes skill and determination and sheer bloody-minded refusal to lose can overcome any technological advantage. The humans haven't forgotten that. And Kira Vex is what happens when you take a species that already excels at violence and add training, experience, and a personality that views combat as art. That's poetic, Dren said dryly, but not very useful for strategic planning. Then let me be clear. Vectress finally turned to face him. That woman has killed more beings in her career than some of our entire battalions. She's done it with simple tools, with weapons that we consider primitive. She's done it across multiple star systems, against multiple species, and she's never lost. Not once. And here's the thing that keeps me awake at night, Chancellor. She wasn't even trying that hard. When she fought my team, she could have killed us all. Easily. She chose not to. She was making a point. What point? That if we push, if we insist on conflict, if we don't have the wisdom to walk away, then next time she won't be gentle. And I believe her. I believe that if we send another strike team to Kepler-9, none of them will come home. And I believe that if we escalate further, If we make this personal, she won't stop at defense. She'll come for us." Dren's mandibles clicked slowly, a sign of deep thought. One woman against an empire. It sounds absurd when said aloud. "Yes," Vectress agreed. "It does sound absurd, right up until the moment her blade finds your throat, and your last thought is wondering how she moved so fast. I've read the reports from other species now, the ones who engaged her and survived. They all say the same thing. Her blade didn't miss once. Not once. Perfect accuracy, perfect timing, perfect execution. She's not lucky. She's not enhanced by technology. She's just that good. And that scares you. Chancellor, with all due respect, it should scare all of us." 3 weeks after the council meeting, High Chancellor Dren found himself doing something he never imagined he would do. Sitting in a neutral space station, waiting to meet with human representatives, and hoping desperately that a certain woman would not be in attendance. The station was called Haven Point, a diplomatic hub operated by the Consortium of Free Worlds. Neutral ground where species could negotiate without fear of ambush or treachery. Or so the brochures claimed. Dren wasn't entirely convinced, especially after what Commander Vectress had told him. His aide, a young officer named Pelax, fidgeted nervously beside him. "Sir, the human delegation is approaching." Dren straightened his ceremonial robes and tried to project confidence he didn't feel. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and 3 humans entered. 2 were obviously military, a tall male with gray hair and stern features, and a shorter female with calculating eyes. The third was a civilian, wearing simple business attire and carrying a data tablet. "High Chancellor Dren," the civilian said smoothly, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "I'm Ambassador Patricia Wells. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Dren touched her hand briefly, mimicking the gesture. "Ambassador, I appreciate your government's willingness to talk." "Of course." Wells gestured to her companions. "This is General Marcus Hunt and Colonel Lisa Tanner. They're here to provide military perspective on the recent incident at Kepler 9. The word incident hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Dren noticed that General Hunt's expression remained completely neutral, while Colonel Tanner's lips twitched slightly, as if suppressing a smile. They sat around a circular table, carefully positioned so no one held a positional advantage. Ambassador Wells activated a holographic display showing the Kepler 9 system. "Let's be frank, Chancellor," she began. "Your strike team attacked a civilian research facility. 50 armed soldiers against 30 scientists and 1 security contractor. That's not reconnaissance. That's attempted massacre." Dren had prepared for this. Our intelligence suggested the facility was conducting military research. We were acting on defensive concerns about our supply routes. "Your intelligence was wrong," Colonel Tanner interjected sharply. "Those scientists were studying extremophile bacteria, microorganisms that survive in frozen environments. The only military application would be figuring out how to keep troops from getting sick in cold weather. Hardly a threat to your empire." "Nevertheless," Dren continued, "the facility's location was concerning. Surely you can understand our position." General Hunt leaned forward, his weathered face showing no emotion. "What we understand, Chancellor, is that you sent soldiers to kill civilians. What you need to understand is that we take a very dim view of that behavior." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Pelax shifted uncomfortably, and Dren resisted the urge to adjust his collar. "Your security contractor," Dren said carefully, "was extremely effective. Kira." Colonel Tanner actually smiled now. "Yeah, she tends to be. We're lucky she was there. Otherwise, those scientists would be dead, and we'd be having a very different conversation right now. You speak of her casually, observed Dren, as if her capabilities are common knowledge. Ambassador Wells exchanged glances with the two military officers. Something unspoken passed between them, some shared understanding that made Dren's scales prickle with unease. "Chancellor," Wells said slowly, "how much do you actually know about Kira Vex? We know she's former military. We know she's extraordinarily skilled with bladed weapons. We know she's been involved in multiple combat situations across various systems." "That's the public record," Hunt said gruffly. "Let me fill in some gaps. Kira Vex joined the human military at age 18, served for 12 years in special operations, participated in 73 combat missions across 11 different worlds. 0 casualties among friendlies on her watch. 0. He paused, letting that sink in. She left the military 5 years ago because she was tired of killing. Said she'd seen enough death for one lifetime. Started working private security, specifically protecting scientists and researchers in dangerous areas. She's turned down recruitment offers from 6 different governments, including our own. Multiple times. She just wants to be left alone to do her job. "Which is protecting people," Tanner added. "Not hunting them, not seeking glory, just keeping innocent folks alive. Your soldiers attacked a facility under her protection. You initiated hostilities. What happened next was entirely predictable to anyone who knows her reputation." Dren felt his composure slipping. "She killed 50 trained soldiers." "No," Hunt corrected firmly. "She killed 50 armed intruders who were attempting to murder civilians. There's a difference, a very important difference. And before you protest, let me ask you something. How many of Commander Vectress's recovery team did she kill?" "None," Dren admitted. "She disabled them and let them leave." "Exactly." Wells nodded. "Because they hadn't actually harmed anyone yet. Kira Vex is extremely good at her job, but she's not a psychopath. She uses exactly as much force as necessary, no more, no less. Your strike team threatened civilians. They died. Your recovery team didn't. They lived. See the pattern?" The logic was irrefutable, and Dren hated that. He'd come here hoping to negotiate from a position of strength, to extract concessions or at least establish some mutual understanding. Instead, he felt like a student being lectured by a teacher. "What does your government want?" he asked finally. "Acknowledgement," Wells said simply. "Public acknowledgement that your strike was unauthorized, illegal, and will not be repeated. Reparations for the damage done to the facility. And a formal treaty establishing clear boundaries between our territories." "That's reasonable," Dren said, surprised. "Of course it's reasonable." Tanner leaned back in her chair. "We're not trying to start a war, Chancellor. We just want to make sure you understand that attacking our civilians has consequences. Painful, bloody, expensive consequences." "And if I refuse these terms?" The 3 humans looked at each other again. This time General Hunt spoke, and his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Then we'll assume you're intent on continued hostilities. We'll reinforce our border facilities. We'll increase military patrols, and we'll hire more security contractors like Kira Vex. Lots more. We've got about 200 veterans with similar skill sets who'd be happy to take those jobs. Imagine trying to raid a facility defended by 5 or 6 people like her, or 10, or 20. Dren felt his blood run cold. The thought of multiple Kira Vexes, each one a whirlwind of blades and death, was the stuff of nightmares. "You're bluffing," he said weakly. "There can't be that many." "Humans have been fighting each other for our entire history," Wells said softly. "Thousands of years of warfare. of developing combat techniques, of perfecting the art of killing. We got very, very good at it. Kira represents the peak of that development, but she's not unique. She's just the one who happened to be at Kepler 9, the one your soldiers happened to encounter. Consider yourself fortunate it was her. Fortunate? Dren's voice rose despite himself. She slaughtered my soldiers. Yes, Hunt agreed. She did. Quickly, efficiently, and with minimal suffering. Some of our contractors aren't nearly so merciful. There's a guy named Victor Reeves who likes to take his time, makes examples out of people, or Sarah Mendez, who specializes in psychological warfare. She'll let survivors go just so they can spread fear and rumors. Or James Wu, who, well, let's just say his methods are creative and leave it at that. You're trying to scare me, Dren said. Yes, Wells confirmed without hesitation, because apparently 50 dead soldiers and 30 traumatized survivors weren't enough. Because apparently you needed to hear this spelled out in small words. So here it is, Chancellor. Leave our facilities alone. Leave our colonies alone. Leave our ships alone. Or we will make you regret it in ways that will haunt your species for generations. The naked threat hung in the air. Pellax had gone completely still, barely breathing. Dren felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Pride demanded he refuse, demanded he stand up for Calthene sovereignty. But wisdom, hard-earned through decades of leadership, whispered different advice. I'll need to consult with my council, he said finally. Of course, Wells said smoothly, the threat evaporating from her voice as if it had never existed. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. But Chancellor, while you're consulting, consider this. Every species we've encountered has eventually decided to test us, to see if our reputation is justified. The smart ones only test us once. The stupid ones keep testing until there's nobody left to learn from their mistakes. Which kind of species is the Calthene Empire? The meeting ended shortly after. Dren and Pellax made their way back to their ship in silence. Only when they were safely aboard and heading back to Calthene space did Pellax finally speak. Sir, what are you going to tell the Council? Dren stared out at the stars, thinking about Commander Vectrus's warnings, about the casual confidence of the human delegation, about the very real possibility that his empire had picked a fight it couldn't win. The truth, he said quietly, that we made a mistake, that we underestimated our opponents, and that if we're wise, we'll accept their terms and count ourselves lucky that the cost wasn't higher. General Thross will call it cowardice. Then General Thross can lead the next assault himself, Dren said sharply. And when he fails, when his soldiers are dead and his pride is shattered, maybe he'll understand what I'm trying to prevent. We're not backing down because we're weak, Pellax. We're backing down because we're smart enough to recognize when we're outmatched. The journey home took 4 days. During that time, Dren reviewed every piece of intelligence they had on human military capabilities. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Humans were technologically inferior in most areas. Their ships were slower, their weapons less powerful, their armor less sophisticated. But they compensated with tactics, with adaptability, with a sheer stubborn refusal to quit even when logic said they should. And then there were their specialists, their elite soldiers, people like Kira Vex, who turned combat into an art form. When they finally reached the homeworld, Dren called an emergency council session. The same officers gathered in the same chamber, but the mood was different now. Word had spread about the meeting at Haven Point, about the human threats, about the potential for escalation. Commander Vectrus was there too. no longer relieved of duty after the psychological evaluation had found him completely sane, just traumatized. He stood by the viewport again, in the same spot as before, watching the stars. "I've spoken with the human government," Dren began, without preamble. "They're offering terms, generous terms, considering what we attempted. They want acknowledgement of wrongdoing, reparations, and a border treaty." "Absolutely not!" General Thross jumped to his feet. "We don't negotiate with—" "Sit down," Dren said quietly, "or I will have you removed from this chamber and stripped of rank. Your pride is not worth the lives of our soldiers." Thross sat, his face flushed dark with anger, but he remained silent. "The humans have made their position clear," Dren continued. "They have veterans, lots of them, with skills comparable to or exceeding Kira Vex. They will deploy these individuals to protect their facilities if we continue hostilities. They will make any future attacks prohibitively expensive in terms of lives lost." "They're bluffing," muttered someone from the back of the room. "Are they?" Vectress turned from the viewport. "Because I thought the same thing. Right up until I watched that woman disarm 30 soldiers without breaking a sweat. Right up until I researched her history and found confirmed kills numbering in the hundreds. Right up until I realized that everything we thought we knew about combat was based on assumptions that don't apply to humans." He walked to the table, placing both hands on its surface. "We assumed that technology matters most. Humans proved otherwise. We assumed that numbers provide advantage. She killed 50 soldiers. We assumed that superior armor makes us invincible. She cut through it like cloth. Every assumption we made was wrong. So yes, maybe they're bluffing about having 200 more like her. Or maybe they're not. Do you want to bet our soldiers' lives on which it is?" The silence was answer enough. High Chancellor Dren straightened in his seat. "I'm recommending that we accept the human terms. Full acknowledgement, reparations, and a formal treaty. Furthermore, I'm recommending that we establish a policy of non-engagement with human territories unless specifically invited. We will mark their space as diplomatically sensitive and require High Council approval for any military operations within 3 systems of their borders." "That's capitulation," Thross said, but his voice lacked conviction now. "No," Dren corrected. "That's survival. That's learning from our mistakes instead of repeating them until there's nobody left to learn. I've led this empire for 23 years. I've overseen the conquest of 4 systems and the integration of 2 new species into our domain. I know when to fight and when to make peace. This is a time for peace." Intelligence Director Morna raised one hand tentatively. "Chancellor, I have a question. Why did the humans send military officers to a diplomatic meeting? General Hunt and Colonel Tanner seemed unnecessary if they just wanted to negotiate terms." Vectress and Dren exchanged glances. It was Vectress who answered. "Because they wanted us to know that their government stands behind people like Kira Vex, that her actions at Kepler 9 weren't rogue behavior or unauthorized violence. They were sanctioned, supported, and representative of human military policy. Those officers were there to make sure we understood that threatening human civilians means dealing with human soldiers. All of them, from the diplomatic corps to the special forces. They were sending a message," Dren added, "that they're unified, that they'll protect their people at any cost, and that if we're foolish enough to test them again, the response will be coordinated and overwhelming." He looked around the table at his officers, seeing the understanding slowly dawn on their faces. "The vote is now," he said formally. "All in favor of accepting human terms and establishing formal diplomatic relations?" hands raised slowly. First a few, then more, then all of them except General Thross. Finally, reluctantly, even he raised his hand. "Unanimous?" Dren declared. "The motion passes. Pelex, prepare a formal response to Ambassador Wells, accepting all terms. Commander Vectress, you'll lead a delegation to Kepler 9 to deliver the reparations personally and apologize to the research staff." Vectress nodded slowly. "And if she's there? Kira Vex?" "Then you apologize to her too," Dren said firmly. "You look her in the eye, and you tell her that the Kalthine Empire regrets the attack and guarantees it won't happen again. You give her your word, as a soldier and as a representative of our people." "Understood, sir." The council adjourned, officers filing out with none of the earlier bluster or confidence. They looked like people who'd just narrowly avoided disaster and knew it. Dren remained seated, exhausted. Vectress lingered by the viewport. "Do you think they'll keep the peace?" Vectress asked quietly. "The humans?" "I think they'll keep it as long as we do," Dren replied. "They don't want war any more than we do, but they won't tolerate attacks on their civilians. We learned that lesson the hard way." 50 soldiers, Vectress said softly. 50 good people who followed. Orders and died because we didn't know what we were dealing with. "Yes." Dren stood, walking to join him at the viewport. "And that's on us. On me. I approved that mission. I thought it would be easy, quick, clean. I was wrong, and people died because of it. That's a burden I'll carry for the rest of my life." They stood together in silence, watching the stars turn slowly. "Her blade didn't miss once," Vectress murmured. "That's what the survivors keep saying. Every throw, every slash, every movement was perfect, like she'd practiced it 10,000 times, like she could do it in her sleep." "Maybe she has," Dren suggested. "Maybe that's what it takes to reach that level. Dedication beyond anything we can imagine. Years of training, of practice, of perfecting one's craft until it becomes second nature. It's terrifying." "Yes," agreed Dren, "and humbling. We thought we were the greatest military power in this sector. Turns out we're not even close. The humans have been fighting for thousands of years longer than we have. They've turned warfare into science and art simultaneously. We never stood a chance." 3 months later, Commander Vectress stood outside the Kepler 9 research facility, his diplomatic escort arranged behind him in a respectful formation. The door opened, and a human male in a lab coat greeted them. "Commander Vectress, we've been expecting you. Come in, please." They entered, and Vectress felt his breathing quicken as memories flooded back. The corridors where his soldiers had fallen. The laboratory where Kira Vex had defeated them so easily. But now the facility was clean, repaired, back to normal operations as if nothing had happened. The scientists gathered in the main conference room. Vectress delivered the formal apology, presented the reparations, and answered questions with as much honesty as he could manage. They were gracious, accepting, willing to move forward. "Is she here?" Vectress asked finally. "Kira Vex?" The lead scientist, a woman named Dr. Helena Park, shook her head. "She left last month. Took another contract protecting a geological survey team on Titan 7. But she asked me to give you something if you came back." She handed Vectress a small envelope. He opened it with trembling hands and found a single handwritten note. "Commander Vectress, no hard feelings. You were following orders. Your soldiers were brave, just outmatched. Tell your leaders I respect the courage it took to come here and apologize. Tell them we don't want war. Tell them there's no shame in choosing peace. But also tell them this. That facility is still under my protection, even when I'm not physically present. The people here are my friends. If anyone threatens them again, distance won't save them. Stay safe out there." KV Vectress read the note twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in his pocket. "Thank you, Dr. Park." On the flight back home, Pelax asked to see the note. Vectress handed it over and watched the younger officer read it with wide eyes. "She doesn't sound like a monster," Pelax observed. "No," Vectress agreed. "She doesn't. That's what makes her so dangerous. She's not driven by hatred or bloodlust. She's just extremely good at her job, and her job is protecting people. Get between her and that goal, and you die. It's that simple, that final." He looked out at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened, everything they'd learned. "The humans have a saying," he continued, "something about the most dangerous weapon being a person who has nothing to prove. Kira Vex doesn't need to prove anything. She knows what she's capable of. Everyone who's faced her knows what she's capable of. That confidence, that certainty, that's what makes her unstoppable." "Will we ever see her again?" asked Pelax. "I hope not," Vectress said honestly, "because if we do, it means someone on our side made another terrible mistake, and I don't think she'll be as merciful next time." Back on the homeworld, High Chancellor Dren reviewed the diplomatic reports with satisfaction. The treaty was signed, borders were established, trade discussions were beginning. The Calthene Empire and the human government were, if not friends, at least no longer enemies. And throughout Calthene military academies, a new case study was being added to the curriculum. A lesson about assumptions, about respecting opponents, about understanding that sometimes the most dangerous warriors were the ones you least expected. They called it the Kepler 9 incident. 50 soldiers sent to eliminate 30 civilians, defeated by one woman with nothing but blades and skill and absolute determination. And in every lecture, every discussion, every analysis, instructors made sure to emphasize one critical point. Her blade didn't miss once. Not once. Because some lessons were too important to forget, and some mistakes were too costly to repeat. That night, in the darkness of space, research continued at Kepler 9. Scientists studied their bacteria, recorded their data, and slept soundly knowing they were protected. And though Kira Vex was systems away, guarding different people on a different world, her presence lingered like a promise. Some promises were threats. Some were comfort. This one was both, depending on which side of her blade you stood. The Calthene Empire had learned their lesson. They would not forget, and they would never, ever speak her name as anything less than a warning.